What is going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. So I guess today I'm going to be changing out wastegate springs because I'm still making too much boost. The car is still peaking 20 to 21 pounds. My tuner wants me to be closer to 15 to 18 pounds. So I'm going to meet him in the middle at 18.5. But that'll be safe. That'll be okay for what I'm doing with the car. I'm on, I believe it was about 18.80 or whatever PSI springs. And I thought it would keep me under 20 PSI, but the car is creeping a little bit, like a pound or two, not much. So the manifold it's a pretty good manifold, but it's still creeping a little bit. So we want to be around, like I said, 18 PSI because that'll be my wastegate pressure. That's the bottom line base pressure for me to build up from there. Generally speaking, you can double your wastegate pressure. So if you have a 15 PSI spring in your wastegate, you can usually run up to 30 PSI on top. If you have 20 PSI springs, you could generally run 40 PSI on top. So my thought process was I'd rather be somewhat on the limit with no ignition timing in it on 93, and then on ethanol I could really crank it up to whatever the car makes, whatever the car likes. You know, I just wanted to know that I wasn't limiting myself on boost because of my wastegate spring pressure. So I know that it's making too much now either way, so it does have to come down regardless. But I don't want to go too far and bring it down to like 15 PSI and then be stuck at 30 PSI max. So like I said, we're going to try to be around 18 PSI. I got to look at the spring chart again. Being at like maybe 16 something, 17 PSI on the gate is going to convert to probably 18 or 19 PSI on this specific car. So like I said, we got to pull these wastegates out. They are all the way down here, so that kind of sucks. You can see I got one gate back here and one right here. Now, they do look like they're easily accessible, but what sucks is the wastegate, I don't think they fit back up with the downpipe on. So I'm going to have to unbolt the dump tube, which is this right here. And there's another dump tube, so I'm going to have to unbolt these, and I can pull those up, but the wastegate themselves are too fat. And once I unbolt it here, I'm probably going to have to drop them down there. And it also sucks dealing with the wrap on this downpipe because that stuff's going to make me itch. But that, and then we got two vacuum lines on the bottom that I got to take off. But I'm going to go ahead and get those pulled out, show you guys what springs I have in there and what the spring chart looks like, and go ahead and convert those over. That way we can be safe to, you know, finish tuning in on 93, and then we can go up. Now, I do plan to run primarily ethanol in the car, but I want to be able to drive the car wherever I go. So if I go somewhere that's an hour away, 2 hours away, 3 hours away, ethanol is going to burn really quick, 30% quicker than pump fuel. It's going to go through fuel like really quick. So I don't want to be stuck running ethanol only and have to baby it on 93. I want to still be able to enjoy the car on 93 octane, and the car should still make 600 plus horsepower on 93. So it's not the end of the world. With that being said, I'm going to make sure that the car is actually reliable and safe to, you know, go wide open throttle with on 93, and then make sure that we have enough on top for ethanol. All right, so we got them out. I got them labeled, the rear one and the front one. Same thing with the dump tubes because they are a little bit different. I don't want to mix them up. The reason I want to mix these up is because they're both obviously using the top port, but the side ports I'm using are different. I'm using the back port on this one, I guess you can call it the back, and on this one I'm using this one that's closer to the front. So I don't want to mix them up because my wastegate lines are routed specifically for those ports on the wastegate. So yeah, there it is. You can see the silver bolts. Yeah, those are the ends. And I taped the side port ones so I will know exactly which one they went to. Okay, so when you get it out, this is pretty much what it's going to look like. And if you got it new in a box, it's probably not going to have this fire ring in there. Just make sure you don't lose this because this is what seals it against the manifold. But if you take it out of a car that's already together, that's how it'll be. This might fall out. Sometimes it'll just have too much carbon in there and it'll stick in there, and sometimes it'll fall out like mine does. But yeah, so that comes out. Just make sure you don't lose that, and then you'll loosen up all 6 of these bolts. Yeah, it's 2, 4, 6. Yeah, so it's 6 little bolts up top that you'll loosen up, and once you loosen that up, you can pull the springs out. I'm going to go ahead and do that now and show you guys how I did it. I'm going to do it with a vise just because the vise will keep it together and keep it from just like popping out loose. And I also don't want to damage the threads because this hardware is really small. So if I put it in a vise, I can loosen all of them up evenly, and then I can just have the vise open it up slowly. That way it's not a lot of pressure against the threads. So we're going to sit it in there, and I'm going to tighten it up. It doesn't have to be really tight. It just has to be snug so it doesn't move around when you're loosening everything up. Yeah, I've been running and running to keep it 100. It's all that I wanted, but lately I don't get the stomach. The higher the summit, the harder the plummet. They know me all over this planet. I'm just a man. You see what I mean about how small this hardware is? Like, it's super, super tiny. So now that we have all 6 of those out, we can start opening it up. Like I said, it'll open up like that, and just keep pressure on it, so because it might start to like bow up or go down. You want to make sure this thing stays straight when you're opening it up, so you don't have anything pop out. And then once it gets opened up pretty, you know, once you have a little bit of space there, you can kind of press on it together, and then just pull it out. Okay, so when you take it off, you'll see that this has little ridges inside of it, and that's where the spring stays locked into. And the same thing with the bottom. So your spring will go in one by one, and when you take it apart, you can, I guess, pull them all out, but if you don't want to deal with untangling them, you can pull them out. Okay, so we got the plain, the white, blue, and green spring, and that is actually right here. And that is 18.85. So I don't know, should we go 1740 or should we go 15.9? You see, that's the problem right there. 15.9. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm gonna do the same dumb thing again. I'm gonna go 1740 and I'm gonna kick myself in the ass. But that's black, blue, yellow. Black, blue, yellow. Do I got a yellow spring? I gotta find a yellow spring. Okay, so we got the yellow springs right here. You see these are just some little guys. You need the black springs. So we're gonna run the black, blue, and yellow. So we're done with the white, the plain, and the green and all that. So we're gonna assemble this the same way we took it out. The yellow, which is the smallest, will go in the center. Then we'll get our blue spring. You see it fits in there. And then we'll get our black spring. And this should be the combination of springs that we need to get to the 1740. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this top back on it, stick it back in the vise, and then we can clamp it down. So you wanna squeeze it in there. Make sure it stays relatively straight, and then bring it back in with the vise. And this is, like I said, it's a lot of tension on it, so I don't like doing it by hand. I don't even know if you could do this by hand. So once it starts coming down, you see it might get a little bit crooked. And that's when you just need to straighten it out, make sure everything's good, and then keep on bringing it in. Once you get close to the diaphragm, you want to go ahead and make sure that it's even all the way around and not too close to one side or the other, because if it pinches the diaphragm, it can rip it and then it won't operate properly. Not sure exactly what it'll act like, but if you pinch it, it's just obviously going to mess it up. So you just want to make sure it's even on both sides, and then slowly bring it in. Once you get almost shut, just go ahead and line it up so you can get your bolts back in, and that's it.
Yeah, I've been running and running to keep it 100. It's all that I wanted, but lately I don't get the stomach. The higher the summit, the harder the plummet. They know me all over this planet. I'm just a man and I can't understand it. Proud that I win and I did it myself. Probably more than if I got the help. Hearing subliminals all on myself. Feel like I'm breaking, I'm falling to hell. Told me I'm sick and I tell her, oh well. Rather be dead than to know that I failed. Live for the chase, life is a race. I'm out of space, so me get on my face. I got a taste, well the whole plate. Finna get laced if you step out of place. Like, first off, you don't run nothing. All talking, your team bluffing. My squad, we all dream crushing. We ain't rushing.
Now that we got all the way out, we can just go ahead and snug these down real good. And like I said, don't get too crazy with it. You don't have to go too tight. These are really small, and you can strip these out pretty easily. It's also 6 of them evenly around, and you got the wastegate spring itself fighting against them. So I doubt these are going to just vibrate loose with that kind of pressure against it. So just like that, you have your springs changed out. Now we got 1740 in here. Don't forget your fire ring. Put that back in there. Stick this back up under the manifold, under your wastegate runner, and clamp it down. This is the part that's a pain because there's not a lot of clearance right here. And when you do get it tight, this is not going to clamp down like that. As you can see, it's going to be more like this. So don't try to get it clamped down like this. I don't know what kind of damage you can do to this clamp, or if you'll just break the bolt. But it's actually going to sit kind of like that once it's all the way clamped down. So I'm going to go ahead and get this put on now. Alright, so we finally got it all done. I was luckily able to get it in there without having to take the strapper off and without having to move much. I did have to take this intercooler pipe off, but obviously that's just specific to my vehicle. Most Supras actually have this water outlet going straight down instead of over like that, like the way it does from the factory. But yeah, I just shortened this and welded a lip onto it and just left it like that. It seemed to work, but now I do wish I would have went straight down, because it would have been easier to get around that to deal with stuff like the wastegate. But it's all good. It's on there. Just gotta get this intake put back on. Probably, yeah. Just gotta put this back on, and we are good after that. Maybe I should spin this around so that silver line ain't there. But anyway, it's done. Okay, so it turns out I actually am gonna be able to drive the car because the roads are like just dry enough. Most of the roads that I would use anyway are just dry enough to where I could take the car out and not have to worry about salt or water for the most part. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this laptop ready to go so we can take old girl out. tires a little bit first, so it'll not do anything stupid in third. Because it's still hitting 20 pounds, I think. So now we just need to save that log. And I'm sure the temperature is kind of helping that also, because it is 30 degrees out, so that's not helping, but we'll see what he wants to do with that log. This will do a nice little second gear hit. Alright, so as you can kind of see by that, the car is still making about 20 psi. I don't think it's going over that, but we won't know for sure till we see the logs. So I gotta see the logs and see how much more over 20 we were going, if it's like 20.5 or getting close to 21. Does kind of suck because I don't really feel like pulling the wastegates out again, but I believe it's also a few other things factored in. Before, when I had the S366, I had 14.50, I believe, pound springs, and the car was making about 15 psi on the gauge, so it was, you know, rock solid. But now, with the newer turbo, I think this turbo is more efficient. It spools better, and it just naturally makes more power up top. So I think it's the turbo itself being more efficient, and I think the cooler weather, the cooler air, you know, the air is just more dense, there's more oxygen. It's going to make a little bit more power per pound of boost, but I think that's also contributing to a little bit of boost creep as well. So I'm just going to talk to my tuner to get more of a confirmation on whether this air is making that much of a difference, and that way when summer comes around, we'll know that we'll still have that 19 psi base. If I do need to bring it down, that's just what I'll have to do. But yeah, I knew this was going to happen. I knew I was going to kick myself in the ass later on, because I was going to be like, man, I looked at it and I said 1590 or 1740, and I went with 1740. You guys seen that I went with 1740, but it is what it is. I'm gonna rock it the way it is and talk to him to see if he's good with that. And if all is good, then we're just gonna go ahead and rock with it, get it turned up on ethanol, get the drivability finished, and we should be good to go from there. But that's gonna wrap up this video. Like I said, it was more of a little quick DIY of how to change springs in a Tial MV-R and MVS wastegate. So I hope the video was helpful to anybody who was looking to switch them. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time. Take care.